But someone who is not
calling
speechless.
Hezbollah smart.
Please, Mike, keep on going.
Yeah, someone who's not speechless. We spoke a little while ago with U.S. Senator Marco Rubio out of Florida, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I asked him about those comments from the former president, in addition to how quickly a dysfunctional Congress right now can actually get aid through to Israel when it really matters. Here's our interview earlier on in the day with U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. In terms of getting aid to the Israelis as quickly as possible, I know it's a priority on both sides of the Capitol right now. Obviously, there's chaos to deal with on the House side, and a speaker has to be in place, or at least extended powers given to the acting speaker in the meantime to make something happen. That could take considerable period of time. On the Senate side, there's always a libertarian, contrarian, what have you, who generally puts a hold on large amounts of foreign aid. With those obstacles in place, how quickly do you see substantive aid being forwarded to Israel coming out of the U.S. Congress?
Well, first, let me say that assistance and cooperation, defense cooperation and work with Israel is very different than Ukraine for a number of reasons. First of all, we don't start off at a baseline of zero. In 2021, I passed a law as part of the Defense Authorization Act that basically authorizes already, codified in our law already, at least $3.3 billion a year of defense cooperation with Israel. So that's already in law. That's already there. It's already ongoing. And in many cases, the munitions that Israel will need for resupply, they're already in the pipeline. They're already ordered. What we can do is help get the contractors to expedite delivery of some of these. We also have pre-positioned material inside of Israel. It's been publicly reported, and it's there for purposes of not just if Israel needs it, but if we ever got into a regional conflict and quickly had to be resupplied, it exists. So there's already a baseline we're operating out of. As this continues, and look, I believe Hamas needs to be wiped out, but it's not going to be easy. Urban warfare, going in on land, and a nation that, frankly, is going to rely on reservists, many of whom just got off a flight 48 hours ago, flying in from Miami, where I live, planes were full of reservists reporting for duty. Urban warfare is difficult with groups that have tunnel systems and are willing to conduct long-term insurgency type campaigns. And so as that develops, the material needs that Israel may need to resupply on might be different than what's anticipated. So I think you'll find all the support you need in Washington, and we'll have the mechanism to deliver it. I think what's important is we understand that baseline's already there, the authorities are already there, and at some point, if more is needed, and it probably will be, we'll need to know exactly what that is, and I don't think there'll be any impediments to getting it done. And I hope that it can be kept separate from these other debates. I've been a supporter of helping Ukraine, but I don't think the two should be mixed because they're two very different cases.
I need to ask you, if I'd be remiss if I didn't. Former President Donald Trump, his pro-Israel bona fides in terms of policy, unquestionable, but some disturbing comments coming out of him in a speech in recent hours in which he criticized Prime Minister Netanyahu, called Defense Minister Yoav Gallant a jerk, called Hezbollah smart, really comments that kind of seemed a bit off the wall, looking at it from an Israeli perspective. Do you have any thoughts on those comments from former President Trump?
Well, look, I didn't hear the comments. I don't know the context that they were said, so I'm just going to respond the way you've described it. I don't think any of that it's surprising, and I'd like to hear an explanation behind it, because I don't think in a moment like this it's certainly helpful. It's also not consistent with the positions that the Trump administration took. I mean, I remain convinced, and I don't want to delve too much into our domestic politics on this, but I remain convinced that if Donald Trump were president today, some of these attacks, some of these conflicts we're seeing around the world would not have happened, because some of these entities would have thought twice before moving forward in that regard. That said, I'm surprised to hear that reported. I certainly don't think there's any, on the contrary, that Donald Trump is a sympathizer or a supporter of Hezbollah, and I think has long been very supportive of Israel, irrespective of who its leader in its democratic process was. So, but I don't think comments like that are helpful. In fact, that's the vein in which they were made, and I don't know how they'll be interpreted in the Middle East, but it's certainly not my view.
In terms of the Congress itself, it seems to be one of the very few issues we've seen in the last several years now that have unified the body in such a way. I mean, even Ukraine, there is a division now in terms of how far aid should go carrying forward. How long do you think this can last? I mean, this military operation is not going to be a short one. It's not a matter of days, and probably not a matter of weeks either. Do you see something similar coming down the road if this is an extended operation, or do you see Congress holding firm here in its support of Israel in the long term?
Well, despite some disturbing images of people in the street supporting Hamas in the aftermath of all this, and some ridiculous stuff coming out of academia, where we have a lot of morally confused leaders of higher education, and that's a separate problem for Americans to confront. I think by and large, most Americans and most members of Congress overwhelmingly are going to be against anybody who decides they're going to go in and massacre elderly women, teenage girls, and little babies. And so I'm glad to see that that level of moral clarity still exists in our politics. The challenge is going to be the following, and that is, this is not one of these 72-hour campaigns or 2-week deals. This is going to be messy. It's a protracted situation. It's going to be, these guys are deeply entrenched inside of Gaza, and it's not going to be easy to degrade them to an acceptable level. And so the real challenge is not today. The real challenge is 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks from now, because the way it has played out historically is Israel is attacked. Everyone rallies to Israel's side. Israel does what it needs to do. And then all of a sudden, starting in Western Europe and then spreading even here in the United States, you start hearing calls of, okay, you've done enough. It's time to stop. And that's where I think the real challenge is going to come. I think we need to understand something very clearly. If Hamas is not eliminated, if Hamas is not substantially degraded, they will come back and they will do this again, and they will do it worse. And other groups will look at this as an example of what they need to do, and they will do the same. We need to understand that if we don't stop this now, it won't be, 1,000, 1,200 people. It could be thousands upon thousands of people that are murdered because they happen to be Jews living in Israel and are hated by these people. So if this isn't stopped now, it's going to lead to more loss of life, more bloodshed. If we've learned anything from history, is that if you don't confront and defeat evil, evil will grow, evil will spread, and evil will come for you.